Is Barack Obama the most politically polarizing president ever? Or have Republicans moved so far to the right that Obama simply can't compromise with them? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. Men, the gap between Republican approval and Democrat approval of Barack Obama is the largest ever for the first 3 years of a presidency. Now, on the other hand, a Yale scholar, Jacob Hacker, who researches congressional voting records, says that since the mid-1970s, Republicans have shifted to the right 3 times farther than Democrats have shifted to the left. And in the House, that distance is twice that. Well, Stephen Green, Barack Obama's presidency has not yet achieved the record polarization of the last 5 years of George W. Bush, all of which make it into the top 10 most polarized list. But at this pace, he may just make Bush look like a uniter, not a divider. Why is that?
You know what? That study is so wrong at its very foundation. Sure, maybe the GOP has moved a little to the right, but from Reagan, I don't think so. And the Democrats have. You know why they haven't moved to the left? Because they're already sitting on the tomb of Karl Marx. They can't get any further to the left. All right, so let's just forget that. But you know what? You give Obama another 4 years, and you will see some real division. He has been in office, he'd been in office a couple of weeks when negotiations began for the stimulus, and the Republicans sat down to get their share of the goodies. And, of course, he cut them off. He said, "You're getting zero." He said, "I won." And that was the height of bipartisanship for this administration. It's been downhill since then.
It was a short journey between I won and we got a shellacking, wasn't it? Bill, the era of moderate Dole and Rockefeller Republicans seems to be dead. The advent of the Tea Party and the 2010 elections have pushed the congressional GOP caucus even further to the right. We've been through several years of mono-party Democrat rule in D.C., and we may be headed for several years of mono-party Republican rule. Do you see any danger in that?
Scotty, you're one of the smartest guys I know, and I've done hundreds of these shows with you, but I've never heard you say anything quite that dumb. To say that we have exited the age of moderate Republicans, of squishy Republicans, when the nominee is going to be one of 2 people in the history of the Republic that have achieved the ultimate liberal goal of universal health care. There's only 2 people in the history of the Republic that have achieved this liberal nirvana. One is the Democratic nominee, and the other is the Republican nominee. So this idea that this big conservative shift is showing itself in national politics is just not true. Mitt Romney is probably the most liberal Republican that we've ever run as a party. Now, with that said, certainly the grassroots is moving considerably more to the right as this giant socialist state begins to unravel. And I think the long-term trends are good. I think what we're really seeing here is the end of this dying elephant, if you'll pardon the expression. This is the last wig of the tail as it goes out the door, and everything that's coming up from the grassroots is solidly more conservative. And my apologies. I love you.
Well, and in fact, Mitt Romney did get the Dole endorsement and would have had the Rockefeller endorsement, but he was not available at the moment. Steve, Presidents Reagan and Clinton were both able to fashion centrist coalitions in Congress to advance at least portions of their agendas, and most Americans say that they want both sides to give a little, to compromise. Yet the health care bill passed with no Republican support. Financial regulatory reform, I believe, with 3 Republicans. The debt deal collapsed last summer. The bipartisan deficit supercommittee failed. There's still no agreement on extending the Social Security tax cut, and it's a presidential election year. Are we doomed to perpetual division and gridlock? And if so, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, and Bill hinted at the reason. And my take on this is even darker. I think it can't get better. It can't get any better or any nicer, and it won't get any less bipartisanship because we're in the end game. We have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see, and we're already sitting on $15 trillion worth of debt. That's a whole year of everything we make in this country that we've already borrowed. It can't go on. It's unsustainable. And we have one side dedicated to just more of the same. We have another side that's finally woken up at least a little bit and is starting to say enough. And end games are ugly because we're going to be fighting over a smaller and smaller pie. We're going to be fighting over the scraps of whatever we haven't already borrowed and spent. Before this is over, the last 3 years are going to look positively peaceful, my friend.
Well, Bill, as you pointed out, the GOP primary battle now pits an historically moderate candidate against two nominal conservatives and Ron Paul, a libertarian. Mitt Romney's backers insist that the only way to win the general election is from the center. But what if there is no center anymore?
See, this is the problem with this entire theory. This entire theory is, let's appeal to independents, but what do independents believe? They don't believe in anything. I'm not calling them stupid. I'm just saying the fact that they're in the middle means they have no strong political conviction, liberal or conservative. You do not win elections by taking the conservatives into the middle. You win elections by bringing the middle over to conservatives. And the way you do that is by explaining your theory and your philosophy in a lucid enough fashion so that people can see the common sense of it and see their own self-interest and their own common sense around their own life experience will naturally bring them to these ideas. This idea that we have to appeal to people who have no ideology by eliminating our own ideology is exactly backwards. We have an ideology that has historically worked and provided levels of prosperity and freedom that have been unparalleled in the history of the world, and our GOP leadership is afraid of this. They're terrified of it, and the nominee will not stand up and defend it. And so we're going to give up the winning story to go to some amorphous thing in the middle, and I predict it's not going to turn out well.
Well, in ordinary times, the wise man seeking the common good draws men together on common ground. People naturally avoid confrontation, and so compromise, while always a bit disappointing, seems better than perpetual conflict. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, some people say enough is enough. Complaints from the left about stubbornness on the right ring hollow because for 4 decades, the left succeeded in rapidly creating a national consolidated command and control, massively unsustainable, liberty-leeching federal government. Since the mid-1970s, the right has pushed back incrementally. Yet today's so-called center is still far to the left of Calvin Coolidge or the framers of the Constitution. Now, I don't trust Beltway Republicans much more than I trust D.C. Democrats to put principle above politics. But this House is not really divided over party or strategy or particular legislation. This country is split over fundamental principles of government, of the nature of a free society, and over how to safeguard the dignity of free men. These crystalline concepts at the core of our Constitution can endure no compromise, only victory that restores liberty. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.